biggest things that you can do to get started if you're in the apparel industry, look at generative AI for artwork. And so an artist with a tablet that can draw and that would normally do it that way can add an AI assistant to that to enhance their drawing or to build out research or links to things that take them deeper into the artwork so that you get more access to what's on the internet through an intuitive process.
We live below the fold. We live underneath those incredible brands.
What is the vision? Right? So like there's a story, but then it's like, where are you trying to go? If it's compelling enough, then you start to get people to believe in it.
All right, we have another incredible guest with us today, Michelle Moxley, who has had an entire 4 lifetimes of career in this space. And I want to let you kind of give background a little bit first because you've just done so much. And
Yeah.
we've been admiring your career from afar and sometimes up close, but we don't get to
Yeah.
spend as much time with you as Joey does, so we're a little jealous. So Carlo and I came out and we said, hey, can you just spend a little time talking with us since Joey mostly gets your attention? But please give us the
Yeah.
intro.
Yeah, Joey and I have a great relationship, and I'm gonna give him a hard time for not being here. Um, so I started in screen printing when I was 17. I actually did some in high school too, so probably before that. I went to college for computer animation and computer programming, but when I was in college, I was screen printing in kind of a small and mom and pop shop, and that's where I learned to digitize. And then I went to Portland and I met Jamie McRae and I started working at Latitudes. And that put me in contact with Nike, which opened up the Jordan door. And I did development for Jordan for almost 15 years. And then I got interested in PVC free inks through Nike. And I met Beppe Quaglia and I fell in love with him and Virus Inks. And I got to work with them for a couple years, which took me around the world and let me learn PVC free and new printing techniques and kind of just expanded my horizons. And then I came back to the United States and focused in with Nike printers all over the US, which led me to New Buffalo Shirt Factory and Dave Gardner, who's one of my best friends. And then I started working there and ended up kind of facilitating embellishment in their Honduran factory for major brands like Nike and Adidas um, and then when I was doing that, I didn't like going out of the country so much, and Rich Hoffman came and offered me an office at M&R. So I was doing work for Gildan and the Honduran factory from Chicago, and then Danny hired me at M&R as innovation director to develop the digital squeegee, and I got into digital development pretty heavily there for the second time in my career. And then I got interested in AI, and now I'm doing an AI podcast for the apparel industry. And I'm kind of trying to do it as a canary in the coal mine because there's so much AI and it's so overwhelming that I think spending time in the space and exploring it gives everybody an opportunity to see it without having to commit resources as much.
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely want to get into talking about AI because I think that's just a topic that I don't care what business you're in, it's part of the conversation. But I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you first, and I had a conversation prior to this call where I said like, I don't know what it is about us, but we can just never leave this industry. What has it been for you? Like, why have we kept you into this industry? Like, what keeps you coming back time and time again?
Um, I think for me, like in particular, being exploratory and being able to dive into new concepts and new ideas is really important. And I think that's not for everybody. Sometimes people pick what they're really good at, and that's kind of their trajectory for their full career. And mine is always kind of drawn by my attention and my curiosity. But then once I get into something, I want to go as far as I can with it. And then I kind of get distracted by the next thing. And I feel like in our industry, those doors always keep opening for me. And I always see something that I feel is, engaging. It's growing me as an artist, and it's allowing me to give back to others and help our industry continue to move forward. And I think that's what kind of always draws me back in. But I will say on the other side of that, every once in a while I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. So it does come up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Is
mean, I guess you can agree. I know Carlo does that. You just can never master it completely. There's always something there's a new
No.
rung to go up on. So I know you feel the same, Carlo.
Yeah, and
yeah.
you can even stay on the exact same trajectory for an entire career and keep exploring and finding new things and inventing new things and being creative in new spaces. And I like that. I think that's really interesting to see somebody evolve over time. But for me personally, I like to, like, I have a lot of skills that go into different areas, and I like to just explore those areas. So AI has been a lot of fun for me because it kind of is a break from what I've normally been doing. I haven't been on a press for 6 months, which is new for me.
Mhm.
Right. That's cool. Yeah, this industry, I don't know if it's because it's classic and old school, where everything is new and there's so many new developments, and it really does. It strangleholds you, and even if you try to leave, somehow, some way, it pulls you right back in. You know,
That's right back.
and so maybe this is all we're good at. I don't know. There's nothing else for us.
Maybe.
But
I
you
never
mentioned
did anything else.
same. We've been
Yeah.
doing this 16 years. It's like I don't know. I wouldn't even know what it would feel like to go and get a real job. I guess in the real world. But I have a question for you. Since you have like even in your bio that you just said right there, you've worked at so many incredible places with so many incredible people. Is there a story or a situation that stands out to you the most? Maybe you guys pulled off the impossible. Maybe it's just a story that's ingrained in you that you'll never forget and that you share all the time. Is there a memorable moment in that journey that stands out?
I would I think when we were younger, we were very um courageous, and we would do things that just seemed almost impossible, and we would pull them off. I remember the first flock job that we did in production that was two colors, and we built this rig to block it was black and white, and they were squares, and we printed silver gel and HD with black and white flock, and the black and white flock touched each other, and there was like bright yellow plastisol, and it was a bunch of shoes inside of a grid. And it was stupid. Like I look at that now and I'm like, no, the answer is just no, go somewhere else. But at the time we're like, yeah, we'll do that. Like you can do it. So yeah, and we figured it out. But I don't think in the long run, like a lot of that stuff I look back on and I'm like, that's for the young. Like that's not for the experienced. Because once you go through that experience, you're kind of like avoid those situations as much as possible. So then when I got kind of into the middle of my career and it was New Buffalo and Honduras, it was more about efficiencies and trying to create something that could make a lot of money and be really effective and meet the demands. But then it lost a little bit of that MacGyver aspect, and I missed that. And then, going from there and now like into AI, I'm looking at it and thinking, well, now like you could take all the MacGyver out of it because the AI can do it for you. Yeah. But I
True.
remember that two color flock. The first flock we did was blue and we all looked like Smurfs. That was really bad. Yeah.
Well, that leads us perfectly into the topic. I know we're all thinking about it. We all
Yeah.
are playing around with ChatGTP or so forth. It's making us better writers. We know that first and
Yeah.
foremost. But how are you applying AI to our business or to screen print or to decoration in a whole? Give us kind of like the top level view first.
So Right now we're producing a podcast like yours. It's called Fahrenheit AI, and it's on the Ink Kitchen, and you can check that out. And the one thing about that's interesting about AI is kind of like screen printing. In order to learn it, you have to learn it step by step. You can't
Hmm.
take in all of that knowledge and be excellent at it. And as you learn it step by step, you start understanding terms and how it's built, so it becomes an effective tool for you. But if you kind of just dive into the generic end of it, it'll be something you can use, but I wouldn't necessarily claim that it's effective. The biggest things that you can do to get started if you're in the apparel industry, look at generative AI for artwork. I
Hmm.
tend to navigate to the ones that give you the control aspect versus ones that are just generating based on prompts. When you generate based on prompts, that would be like Dolly or Midjourney or Ideogram, for example. They will generate things that look very similar to each other, and people are getting used to them. And we've been in it for a year, so it's kind of like obvious. And then also, like some of your customers, for example, like rock and roll totally is rejecting a lot of the AI generations because they feel like it's taking work away from the actual artists and then stealing on top of it. Um, but alternatively to that, you can use AI as a tool to assist an artist. And so an artist with a tablet that can draw and that would normally do it that way can add an AI assistant to that to enhance their drawing or to build out research or links to things that take them deeper into the artwork so that you get more access to what's on the internet through an intuitive process.
And
That
are
kind of
you
generative.
using that? Are you doing that native, like inside of an Adobe product, like Illustrator or Photoshop or anything like that?
So Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop have some really good tools. Illustrator has a tool called Retype in it that is really effective.
Hmm.
That's AI based. Mostly I'm doing those outside of Adobe. Stable Diffusion has a lot of controls in it, but it's kind of not the most intuitive interface. But there's Stable Diffusion UIs that you can interact with that allow you to draw. There's some called Krita, and there's one called Kria that allow you to draw and interact with them. And then Stable Diffusion itself, if you do get through that learning curve, you can feed in your own logo and redesign it with prompts. So it's like influenced by what you have as a starting point, and it's really good for social media. So that's the other place
Mm.
that getting started in AI is really effective for apparel embellishers, is just using it for social media.
Definitely. What's so I'll be the first to say that I don't know much about this AI world other than rewriting my emails to my team and making me sound smarter than I actually am.
Yeah,
But
it will do that.
you kind of alluded to it a minute ago. I'm sure you have to debate this a lot, right? And especially you coming from the regime of pioneering, and you probably paved the way for many of us screen printers. Um, so you know all the work and creativity and talent that goes into creating artwork. But now you have this
Yeah.
incredible tool that can assist, and I'm sure you have to debate people all the time and say, well, you're making this, you're taking the creativity, you're taking away the old school approach by implementing these new tools. What's your debate to that? How do you have this conversation with someone that is so dialed into the old school way of doing things and pioneering?
So part of that debate is actually happening. Actually, I would say most of it is actually happening inside of me. The podcast is actually the good, the bad, and the really strange about AI. So we look at it from like applying it to projects and ways that you can utilize it, and then also we question the same projects and the same like methods. I did one piece of artwork for a local farm here that had the same logo for 50 years, but they wanted to enhance it. And I told them I was using AI. I took actual photographs of their logo was a tree, and I took actual photographs of the trees on their farms. I made it look the same, and they thought it was too AI generated. And I thought, wow. And it was the first AI that I had generated when the response came in that I felt kind of sad, where I was like, oh, I worked really hard on that and they didn't like it. That kind of sucks. But at the same time, everything I had generated before that, when people didn't like it, I was like, I don't care. It's not mine. So that was a new like experience for me as an artist to have some kind of an emotional attachment to one that I had worked on, even though technically it wasn't something I drew. I did work on it and try to form it correctly. So I have these constant conversations with myself. And I think at this point with artwork, using something that has more control means that the artist is still involved. But as soon as you give up control and you're just prompting with words, it's kind of just a clip art machine.
Hmm.
And it's not even like it's a clip art machine that's stealing. So I have those conversations with myself all the time. Although Justin Lawrence from Oklahoma City Teas gave the example of polar bears in a hot tub drinking hot cocoa for a polar plunge as a t-shirt. And like I would totally use AI for that because God knows like I'm an artist and I can draw that and I don't want to. That just sounds like
Yeah.
a headache. So I mean there are things that you can kind of push off on it to get rid of them. And as long as the customer's happy and they know where it's coming from, then it's not hurting anyone, I think. So we talk about privacy and stealing and all of those things because it's all really up in the air and it's a big question.
Hmm. What I've been kind of pushing, at least conceptually to my team is that we're trying to get superpowers. That's what we're trying to do with AI, whether it's on the font side or on the graphic adjustment or on the engineering side. We use it a little bit to produce the right code, but we're not trying to actually have it replace anything or anyone.
Yeah,
It's more about just taking that individual that was an 8 and making them 15, and
right.
just using technology to become a superhero. So I think, yeah, I love what you said there. We really don't want to, we don't want to necessarily just prompt for graphics. Kind of takes the trade away, but if you can get superpowers, it could really be helpful.
So that's an excellent point, and that's what I'm researching now and actually developing is using agents, and they can
Hmm.
code for you, and they can do simple tasks for you. And it makes sense that an AI would be better at coding than a human. It's something that was created to
Yep.
control a computer, and it has to be consistent, and it has to be mapped out. And honestly, as I go through the process, like I've introduced coding back into my daily workflow, which has been many years since I've done that. And it's really nice to have it back in my workflow and then also to challenge myself to do things that bring up my level of expertise. So I write my own Photoshop scripts now, and I've got it so that I
Hmm.
can open a separation, push a button, and get to a state where all I have to do is make the hard decisions. And then
Yep.
my goal in using the podcast with the apparel industry is kind of just to share that so everybody can see it's upskilling. But it's doing it in a way that you're not losing any aspects of yourself and you're just accelerating your business and making things hopefully easier. It should make your life
Hmm.
better. If it's making your life harder, then AI should just go away because it's scary enough as it is.
Right. I have a question about you. You kind of just touched on it, but separations, and I know enough, a little bit about separations to at least be kind of dangerous. At least the topic of it. I don't know. I've never opened a file in my life, so
He knows how to spell separations,
I know
so that's helpful.
I
Hey,
use
that's
chat.
pretty good. That's pretty good. That
Yeah.
can be hard.
I don't even know if I can spell it, to be honest with you, but uh, I kind of how you talked about how you kind of deal with this problem in your head, like should I or shouldn't I, or same thing with separations. Like I feel like that's one thing that a lot of us in the industry we want to keep that hard. As soon as it becomes easy, everyone can do it. Right now, a value that we give or someone else can give is that we do separations really well. Whether it's a 16 color print or a 10 color print, that's something that's
Yeah,
hard. Now,
yeah.
is there a place for AI in separations? Does that exist now? Is that in the future? Where does that sit?
So I agree with you, and I think historically in our industry we've proven over and over again that when you try to make separations automated, it looks bad. We've created tools that can be helpful, but not necessarily are capable of doing the whole thing. And it takes an artist eye, it takes a human influence, it takes understanding printing, really. Um, but ultimately, I think with AI, it's capable of understanding aspects of it. So one of the things that I'm doing is training a GPT to understand separation. I do separations through Photoshop and I get a program code out of it called Script Listener, and then I feed that into the GPT so that over time it kind of starts to understand what I'm doing, that you could ask it questions. Now, I've been asked by others, like, do you give it mistakes so that it can learn from mistakes? And I'm like, I haven't learned enough to train something on mistakes yet. Like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to navigate that space. So right now, everything I give it is perfectly clean. So I have no idea how long it's going to take for it to be an effective agent and effective in being an assistant. But if you can imagine a separator that's sitting down and they've been trained to do complex separations for your press, and they've been trained basically in a style so that they fit your shop. And then you have this autonomous agent that sits with them. So as they're getting into the process, if they get stuck or they feel confused, instead of it showing up on press, it could run through this agent and say, hey, this could potentially be a problem. This could potentially be a problem. So it's kind of like a live checklist, instead of just I'm going down this checklist that somebody created that says these steps are right. It's actually reviewing it against all these previous jobs. And I would recommend any shop that wants to get separations like trainable and elevate everybody and upskill everybody equally, to do that, to try and take what you've already done and train one of these tools to help everybody be good at it.
Yeah, I was wondering, could you train a model to tell us what type of ink we should be using? For example, I know that garment dyed products are very complex. We've run into enough of them in 2023, and I mean, just seemed like everything was garment dyed last year. Is there a place where we in our platform we already have what the garment is, and then
Yeah.
we could see how many colors it's going to be? Would there be a place where you can then train the model to say, okay, it should be this underbase and these type of top colors and so forth, and we can kind of not have a human do that every single time, rather have the model spit that out?
So I'm going to answer you by giving you a different example, and then circle back. But so, for example, I'm working on building a vendor model where I take all of the videos of stalls that they have posted online and have the agent review them and digest them, basically, so it understands them and it builds a memory. So instead of you having to go and Google search for a particular stalls item and then try and like skip through the video to the point where it talks about that, or try to figure out which video is directly about that one, the agent will tell you the information and then direct you towards where to find it on the internet. And then you could build an internal agent that knows things about your factory that communicates with that expert. So in your scenario, I would say it would happen similarly, where you would have to build an agent that takes the data from the past. So it knows the fabric
Hmm.
types, it knows the ink types available, and it knows the scenarios where it's been used. But I would also recommend that it's connected to some vendor agents that are more experts than it. Um,
Hmm.
so if it has a contradiction, that it could say to you, I don't know, the vendor says this and I think this, and you would have to figure it out in those places so that it could learn. The one problem with building an agent that only has like your narrow perspective is that it doesn't see outside that box. So what you get back are the hallucinations of your limited data. I think you could certainly
Hmm.
start with all of your data, you guys, and you would get a pretty effective agent. But as vendors start pulling these assistants up, having them all connected together is where it's really going to be a gold mine, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And that's kind of what we're
No,
trying to
no, that,
build this year.
yeah,
That's what
yeah,
we're
no, that
trying to
totally
build this
makes sense.
year. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and even it's just like you're trying to take the human error out.
Right.
Ultimately, we want the team to focus on, value add stuff like being creative or, dialing in the press or so forth, and less time on like that routine stuff that is over and over again that somebody just forgets to put the proper underbase on there, and then it's like, and then you have all these garments that are destroyed and so forth, when you could just take all that kind of mindless work out and focus on the creativity.
Yeah, and from my perspective, like in my career, just imagining taking some of the pressure off of the ones that know, uh, would be great. You know, when you're the
Yeah.
one that everybody goes to for everything, and it's like I don't know how to give you this information so that it's consistent. I've developed methods for that, but this tool to me looks like that way to do that, where you can feed in all the expertise and it can help you along, and it won't require it to be so much pressure on it on a short list of people.
Are you creating these models with OpenAI? Like, are you just creating custom GTPs, or what system or software are you using for that?
So I always tell people to get started with custom GPTs because it's the easiest one. And if you already have a chat GPT subscription, it's really simple to go in and start playing around. It's also really fun to go in there and see what other people have built. Like there's some really
Hmm.
cool
Yeah.
kind of unexpected GPTs in there. And
Yep.
I do use their GPTs to help me build things. I don't generally build, I am building, like the Photoshop assistant is a GPT. Um, but if I build an agent, like an autonomous agent, if you watch Fahrenheit, I've tried out several different platforms. Most recently, I'm using AutoGen because it has a UI now, so you don't have to code as much. But it creates independent agents. So I have one built right now that does my social media posting and it posts to LinkedIn. And then it knows all of my account information. And I can, like, so for example, the one I built to post to social media, I went to Chat GPT and I built a persona for him. It was a marketing executive that had done it for 20 years, and he had targeted specific goals that he was supposed to achieve through his posts. And I gave that persona to the autonomous agent through AutoGen. So then when he does his posts, you can see him doing call to actions, and he has specific targets that he tries to complete, like increasing followers and spreading the podcast. And those
Hmm.
kind of tools aren't always necessarily available in GPT. So once you go outside of it, you can build more complex agents, and you can build agents that you could actually talk to and that can see and that can hear, like Alexa or Siri, but they're
Right.
yours.
And then
Yeah.
bring on the robots. Right after
Yeah.
that, is
Yeah.
that next? Are we going to walk out to a factory
Well,
floor that looks like Tesla? That's my only question left.
Well, so Ray Smith sent me a screen capture today, and I have to do some research, but it was someone uploaded a CAPTCHA into ChatGPT and asked what it said, and it said that it was a CAPTCHA and that it was built to confuse robots, and it says, and then it wrote down exactly what the letters were. So ChatGPT is not a robot in the eyes of a CAPTCHA. So it's like a human,
Hmm.
so it can pass all of those things. So, in answer to your question, I think that if you go to Asia right now, there's tons of robots and cobots being built that are starting to integrate AI. It will spread here. But as far as like in our factories, I think right now what we have is the ability to build it ourselves. And I think that's what we've always been really good at. And we should definitely start there. And then we should kind of um, ask the vendors where they're at with it and what their next steps are going to be. And are they going to put it into cobots and which ones, and help drive their directions? Because I think for them, it's all brand new too. So we get the opportunity to say what we want. If we want a robot, like fulfillment kind of AI robots would be a good place to start.
Hmm.
I bet a lot of the listeners are kind of like me right now, mind blown that we're talking about AI. And screen printing, right? Like the
Yeah.
oldest classic stuck in your way industry, and we're talking about
Yeah.
AI and tech. Um, what do you think? Like this is my last question for you. What do you think? Like there's there's no denying that this industry sometimes they don't want to change, right? They want to stick to what
Yeah.
they know best. I mean, there's people still using wood screens just because it works, like wooden
Yeah.
screens. Nothing wrong with that. But it's like the way we've always done it. We're going to continue business that way. What do you think? What do you think the delay is, or the spread will be on a company that starts to adopt these things and understand that the time is now and starts to learn it, or they keep pushing it off? Is there a big spread between?
My perspective, like today, the spread between is like an Amazon where they've already adopted it and they've already integrated it. And then, that standard screen printer that you're talking about, I don't think that those screen printers should go away. And I don't necessarily think that they should change anymore. I think that what happened over the past few years in the pandemic has opened up the space. And the entry point is like basically an idea now because you can generate art and you can get, a Printify account and you can print out t-shirts. But I think because that space is opened, there's opportunity for those of us that want to expand into things like AI to really get on that e-commerce like front edge where it's starting to create that user experience into a new space. And I think that's really exciting. I think those people that have just an idea are going to be lost after they get past those first few steps, and they're going to turn to vendors that know what they're doing. And I think there's a lot of really new creative space through AI and the whole e-commerce experience for us. But I think there's also a place for the screen printer of before too, because they stuck around through everything so far. And the only thing that's going to make them go somewhere is just kind of aging out at this point. I don't think they have to change. I don't think you're going to upload into an agent how to use a wooden screen.
Yeah, we hope not.
We hope.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, this is good stuff. I think we can keep going on forever and ever with AI, and maybe we can also like check in, maybe like
Yeah,
halfway
yeah,
through
yeah.
the year. Kind of, I'd love to see where you guys are at. I know I'm going to start listening to the podcast. Michelle from our team will definitely drop a link to your podcast in the notes here, in the show notes here. But thank you so much for joining us, giving us at least some glimpse. Carlo and I are still trying to figure it out, reel it back a little bit. But I do think we are definitely going to start applying some of this stuff to what we're doing. And certainly I know Justin from our team and our art department is trying to utilize this any way they can. So thanks a lot for the info.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a good time. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, Michelle.